I'm here today with Scott of Fallujah to talk about the upcoming new record, Empyrean, out September 9th on Nuclear Blast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Excited.
I'm excited for you because I'm one of the few that probably got to listen to the whole record, and I got a lot of questions for you, and that's why we're here. But before we talk about the record, I got to ask you this. You guys have gone through a few lineup changes over the last couple of records. Were those lineup changes you looking for the right fit for what you wanted the band to sound like, or is there something else behind it?
The latest lineup change, I would say. Well, I think the latest lineup change has a lot to do with what was going on in the world. You know, I mean, like we had all our tours ready to go, and everything basically got canceled because of the pandemic, and basically we were forced to take like this 2-year break. I mean, I didn't take a break. Like I worked on music and made sure to write this record or whatever, but you know, there's a lot of people in the band, especially like there's people in the band that have been in the band for 10 years, you know what I mean? And now they're expected to just kind of like wait around and hope that everything is going to come back together and wait around on me to finish music and stuff like that. And I mean, it makes sense that during the pandemic, during like 2 years of not knowing what's going on, other people are going to go try other things, you know, and like someone went to school, you know what I mean, went and got an education, and then, you know, other people just didn't have the same exact motivation as other people in the band. Like, you know, despite not having any tours and not knowing if we're ever going to be able to go on tour again, you know, during the pandemic, it was a weird thing, right? People were kind of like, it'll end, it won't end. And yeah, some people just didn't have the motivation to just like believe and put in tons of work. I mean, it is ridiculous amount of work to put in and not know if you're going to be able to tour on it and all that stuff. So it wasn't like, oh, we need to find the right person. But when those people decided to step out, you know, I made sure to find the right people, and I took my time too to find the right musicians, as opposed to, you know, like, okay, we have a tour next month, I got to get a guy as soon as possible. One of those things. It was something where I was able to take my time and do a lot of auditions and find somebody who's going to take it to the next level. And that's for sure what happened with Evan Brewer. You know, it took a lot of back and forth, and him finally like loving the music and wanting to do that. And then same thing with Kyle. I feel real lucky to have found Kyle. Excuse me, sorry, I'm a little sniffly in the morning. But I felt really lucky to find Kyle. We had auditioned probably like 10 vocalists, and some of them were really good. Some of them were talented in certain aspects and maybe not in other aspects. And when we finally tried out Kyle, his demo was just fucking insane. Like what he wrote and what he, recorded, it just sounded so much better than anything else I heard. So I gave him some new music to try some auditions over, and he just killed it, totally killed it. That song, Soulbreaker, was basically his audition. He wrote the lyrics and phrasing to do his final part of his audition, and like what you hear on the record is basically what he sent me. So it's just like, dude, this guy's super good at writing music. I mean, most of the time I have to write out the patterns myself or like whisper them out, you know what I mean? Like nobody nails it the first time usually, because I have like the vision of where I want the vocals to sit, and maybe they have their own vision. But with this guy, we just totally aligned with everything. So to answer your question, no, I didn't like look for people, but once I got the chance, I was able to find some pretty amazing musicians, and real stoked we did, because they definitely both took the album to the next level. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think you kind of answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. When you look at Kyle and Evan, there is the long-lasting impact that they will have on the sound of the band, not just in terms of what they can do for you on this record, but going forward. Sure. But there's also the immediate impact that you could see right away that this album is going to be a different album, just because you have these two guys now in your corner. What kind of impact do you see in the short term, and what kind of impact do you see in the long term?
In the short term, it was just like how well both of them were at writing. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody, some people are really good at performing. Some people, you know, writing is a lot harder for them. And it's a challenge when you got like multiple people, especially when you got a band that's kind of like already established. We have a sound, like though the sound of the record is not established, where we were going, you know what I mean? It's not established. It's like people have to come into the projects like having to know that I have already 4 records, and they're trying to like write to that style. And then, you know, there's like just like natural butting heads with people seems to happen, and disagreeing on what direction it should go and all that. And with these guys, it was just immediately they got what I was trying to do. I mean, and they just like contributed to it, and they contributed ideas that I never thought of. Like with Evan, it was crazy. Just like, we were doing it remotely. He was in Nashville, I was in California, so I would send him over tracks, and then he would try some bass demos and send it back over to me. And like, just some of the ideas are just stuff I would have never thought to try, like the rhythms he chose to do. And like at first I'd hear him and be like, oh, that's kind of strange to me. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, this is way better than anything I could have ever thought of. And it was like that pretty much every time he sent me a demo. It got to the point where he would send me a demo and I would just like jump up in my chair and start freaking out. I mean, Evan's been one of my favorite bass players since I was like 15 or 16. You know what I mean? I saw him play with Animosity when it must have been like 2006 or 2007 in like Fresno, California. So it's like, been watching that dude for years. And most of the time when I would record with Rob, we would reference that dude all the time. We're like, all right, we're trying to figure out what kind of, what to write to a guitar part or something, what kind of bass part. We were always thinking about, what would Evan do? No, he would, instead of doing 16s, he would do quarter notes or whatever. So like, that was just amazing to like have this dude that you kind of were always emulating when you're recording, and then there he is, he's just doing his thing, and man, he was just killing it. Just everything he tried, all his ideas were super unique, and I don't know, just brought that flavor that like you need when you're making music. It's weird when you make music by yourself, you know what I mean? It doesn't sound right. You need that like collaboration. You need like that, dynamic. But anyway, that's Evan. Kyle, that guy, he kind of just jumped in. I really, like, at the time I was auditioning something, I needed a lot out of a vocalist. I need somebody to help me with lyrics. I needed somebody to put a lot of time, because I didn't want to sit on it for like another year. So I was like, yo, if we're gonna get this done, we're gonna get it done in like 2 months, not 6 months or whatever. So it's gonna require a lot of work. And the guy instantly got to work. Like, I think I would teach and do Twitch all day, and then I usually would record like at night, maybe from 4 to 8 hours, you know what I mean? And sometimes in the middle of that night, I would have some time to chat with Kyle about lyrics. And usually we would talk from like maybe midnight to 3 or 4 in the AM, you know what I mean? Just like that's the only time both of us had free time in our schedule. And you know what I mean? We would go through the lyrics, we would figure out the subject matter, he would write out the phrasing, you know what I mean? And then he would take that, work on it for a couple of days, and then we'd meet up again and do these late night sessions and slowly chip away at it. Super collaborative. And I don't know, not everybody's down to work all day and then stay up till 3 in the morning to work on something that, might get released and get toured on. So it's just having people's like motivation and energy like that, like totally revamps everything and makes you super inspired. And I mean, the guy is writing super sick material. So yeah, as far as immediate gratification, it was like this immediate boost of inspiration and motivation. And we were all just like super hyped to hear each other's ideas. And I don't know, it's like it was wrapping up at that time. But the long term, as far as the long term, I'm hoping, that we can make a couple records with this lineup, because I think it's really special. It's like it came together and the music came together so well. And yeah, hoping to put out a couple records with these guys, and they all seem stoked to do that. So pretty happy about that.
So with this record, with the new members, with the pandemic, with everything that's going on, you obviously have a creative process that was working for you with the previous albums, but now you have all of these wrenches been thrown at you, all these curveballs. Did that impact your creative process drastically in a positive, negative way?
Yeah, I mean, I think just on how the record came out, and in the end, it was super positive, but definitely there was a lot of wrenches thrown into things. But like what I'm used to is having like only like a month to work on something before we have to go back on tour. I'm used to being kind of like on a hamster wheel, you know what I mean, and not being able to like have a lot of time to like think about things. And especially with like music, like instead of just writing a riff and calling it done so we can move on to the next thing, like really examining it and make sure it's like, is this the best it can be or whatever. So I guess the wrenches that were thrown in were mostly just, losing members over the pandemic, I'd say. Just like, okay, so instead of just writing music, now I'm trying to find new members. And I'm also trying to deal with finding an income as well. You know, that, I mean, everybody had to, a lot of people had figured that out in our industry, right? Like the touring's done, all that stuff's over, and we don't know if it's coming back. So, you know, it takes away your focus when you're trying to figure out like, okay, how am I going to replace this income? And then you got members who are like, listen, man, I think I'm going to go back to school. And you're like, okay. So I'm like trying to focus on just writing sick music, but you know, we have all these logistical issues, auditioning people now, and you know, just figuring my whole thing out slowly but surely, kind of figured all those things out and was able to, like, you know, just focus on the music. And then, you know, the pandemic's still going. I was able to spend more time on this music than I think I've ever spent on other albums, and certainly put more work into this album than I've put into other albums, maybe except for the Flesh Prevails. Like that one was pretty huge. But so yeah, like I said, I'm used to always having like a looming tour or something that's going to take me away, and it's kind of like everything's like a rush. But with this one, it was kind of like, yeah, we got to rush. We want to get this done in under like a year and a half or something like that. But like, it's not like one of those things where anybody's really pressuring us. So it was pretty awesome to have these songs, you know, go through them and find any section that maybe needed just a little bit more embellishment, or maybe was taking away from the momentum of the song, and just constantly examining the songs over and over again and finding those weak spots and changing them. And there was even times where I was able to like delete entire parts and replace it with better parts. And like, that's just stuff I've never really been able to do. It's just just always in a rush. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, you got to get like the first album, we had to get that done just to jump into the world. And then we had to finish the second record. And then immediately after that, like, we were moving on to another record label. They book us tours. They're asking for a new record. Like, I swear it's like a hamster wheel. You never really get a chance to sit and think about it. And our second and third album were basically wrote all at once, just because there was just like no time. Basically, we turned one record into Uniquely to Records, and as soon as we turned that record in, Nuclear Blast is like, yeah, we would like to sign you, we'd like to work with you, but we need our record, another record to work with you. So it was just like nonstop. And for me, it was cool to just like have a moment, like let's make the craziest record like we've ever made ever, and it'll be super tedious and it'll take a lot of time, but why not do it during this time? So yeah, I think it wasn't like positive, like how much work and time it took or whatever. Like, it wasn't like super like enjoyable, pleasurable thing to have all that time, but I think it was super positive how the record sounds now because of all that time. Like, this is for sure one of the most embellished albums we've had. It's, yeah, and now it's just like, yeah, it's a standard we have to hold basically, which is kind of crazy. How are we going to do this when we are not in a pandemic and we have tons of tours? I mean, we'll figure it out. But
well, and
yeah.
with so many balls that you were juggling at that time, with so many things for you to concentrate on, did you put down anything that you wanted out of this album? Like, did you have a main focus that I need the album to deliver this?
Oh yeah, that's a really awesome question. I think after writing the fourth record on Dying Light, which is much more of like a kind of black metal shoegazy kind of sound, it's a lot more atmospheric. You know what I mean? We had already written like 3 records of like this very intense, riffy, like atmospheric sound that we cultivated. I kind of want to just like step away from that for a moment and try some new ideas and new concepts to execute on records. And for me, that was like super challenging. Like, it was really outside of my comfort zone. Like, for me, if you're going to say like, you know, just pick up a guitar and write some music that naturally comes out, it comes out the way this new record comes out, you know, like very riffy, like death metal prog, you know what I mean? It's just like,
yeah, very.
When I'm improvising, that's just kind of what kind of comes out of my hands or whatever. So I was really trying to like not just do what comes out naturally, because I felt like I've been doing that for years, and I was trying to come up with like new progressions and sounds and ideas, and it was just really challenging. I was just spending a lot of time, you know, banging my head on the wall, like, it's like, is this new sounding, and like all that stuff. And you know, we completed that record and it was really satisfying. Like, it really scratched that like kind of artistic itch. Like, okay, we were able to step away and try some new things. And having that been done, I wanted this record sitting down. I knew it from like before even writing the first riff. Like, I want this to be a super complex and intense record that's like reminiscent of like the goals that the band had earlier in their career. Like when we were 17, 18, that's right around when the first record came out. Like, we were obsessed with like you know, Necrophagus, Deeds of Flesh, Spawn of Possession, Obscura, like these very intense prog bands, like they're more like death metal, progressive or whatever, but you know what I mean? Like they have these like
Yeah.
insane songs, the insane solos, and it's just these crazy immense records. And that's like what got me to fall in love with this kind of music, is like these records that you like listen to over and over and find all the little details every single time you listen to it. So I knew like, yo, this is going to be our most pissed off record, as well as our most like complex and embellished record. Like I just knew that I wanted to take the sound that we already had, you know, like that atmospheric, heavy kind of prog, but just like have this, insert this like super aggressive kind of pissed off, very riffy sound into it. So like I knew from the beginning that that's what we wanted to do, and that was kind of cool. It actually made the record a lot easier, whereas the last record, it was kind of like we were kind of mining for sound, you know what I mean? We're digging through the dirt, trying to find a diamond or whatever. Where this record, I knew I could hear the record in my head, you know what I mean? It was just like, yo, I know what I want it to sound like. Let's bring this to life. And like the mission was clear the entire time, which made it easier when you're like looking at the song and you're listening to it and you're like, what is this song missing? What does it need? Or what does it have that shouldn't be in there? Like when you know from the beginning, like, yo, this, like what the vision of this record is, it's super easy to be like, oh, I'll take that out, put that in here, like, and all that. And so, yeah, man, I'm stoked. I think we got what we have envisioned in the beginning, you know what I mean? Which is always super hard. You always start off with something you envision and you realize that maybe it doesn't sound as good coming out of the speakers as it did in your head and all that. And so, yeah, it took a while, but yeah, I think we did it.
One of the interesting things that I took away from this album, perhaps just me, maybe you're going to agree with me, is that this album offered me two different paths as I was going from the first to the last song. On one hand, I felt like the album was very balanced from beginning to end. You can find the sense of continuity, and you can also find the elements that are common from song to song. But the album also offers growth. Like I honestly felt like I was learning something with every single song, almost like you're learning how to speak, right? Your vocabulary gets stronger and stronger. And I felt like I was learning something with each and every single track. And that growth never dipped. There's this gradual learning curve that just keeps on moving with every single song. But underneath it, it also feels very linear at the same time. So there's this duality of aspects that the record gave me when I was listening to it. Was that by design? Do you get the same vibe out of the record? Do you feel differently about the record?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, the way we arranged the songs and the lyrics, you know what I mean? It definitely was all super purposeful, and it has to do with the lyrical content. You know, the name of the album is Empyrean. It's like this higher plane that you're trying to reach kind of thing. And the record is about kind of pushing through struggle and pain and all of the aspects that keep you from reaching this higher level, whether it's like self-sabotage or, you know what I mean, dealing with aspects within the world. And it's kind of like an emotional journey in a sense. And I wanted the record to kind of sound like it's coming out of darkness and slowly coming into the light. And eventually you're in Empyrean in this heavenly sound. And you can hear that with, you know, the songs. Like, I'll just take the beginning and the end. The beginning is called The Bitter Taste of Clarity. Mm-hmm. Starts off very, like, even the music, I wanted to start off as just white noise. You know what I mean? It just comes in like, Kah! You know what I mean? And then it slowly goes into a riff. And then that riff turns into kind of like a breakbeat riff. And then that riff turns into like a tech riff. So slowly kind of forms into like this like thing. And then it explodes into the chorus. And we're at the chorus. And that whole song is about kind of like, you know, the bitter taste of clarity. It's like the dark realization that we're like, you know, it's like that kind of panicked realization when you know you're in a spiral, you know, you're on a downward slope, you're in a place that you can't remain. It's detrimental, you know what I mean? It's so we're starting from this very low point, and even the music sounds real dark and angry and pissed off and kind of mysterious. And then, you know, the next few songs are Radiant Ascension and Embrace Oblivion, and they're talking about like, how do we reemerge? You know what I mean? How do we fight through the chaos and adapt to it and be able to continue on? And I'm going to skip a bunch of songs. When you get to near the end, the last two songs are Celestial Resonance and Artifacts. And the sound from the beginning of the record is, you know, very tight and loud and pissed off and angry. And yeah, by the end of the record, everything is very like kind of airy and super atmospheric and spacey. And that's where we go, you know, we fully go into it on Artifacts with like, I think there's this massive prog section where we got the guitars all chilled out and the drums on the ride or whatever, and the leads are soaring, and after that it drops into this huge heavy part. It's almost like a melodic Meshuggah. We've got fucking Tori way up there singing, and then it goes into another huge section with solos, and I just wanted to feel like by the end of the record you're just like an eagle flying through a valley or something, or a fucking astral being, you know, just like flying through space. And I wanted the beginning of the record sound like we're on Earth right now. In fact, we're like in the mud, you know what I mean? We're in the gunk of reality, and then slowly pushing through that until till the end of the record where you're just floating and you're in another plane. And that was we definitely did that on purpose. And you could hear the earlier songs are all kind of like techie and earthy and kind of like brutal, and slowly it kind of like goes fully atmospheric by the end of the record. And if you read the lyrics, it plays the same kind of role into it.
And I really like the guitar sound and the sound overall, because you guys merge these proggy elements with technical death metal elements. It's almost hard to separate the two, because sometimes I'm listening to a song and I'm like, wow, that feels proggy, but it still feels technical at the same time. And I'm like, so what am I going to call this? Like, you know, like in the world that we live in where we have to put everything under labels, it becomes so hard to define it, because it doesn't feel like it's one, it doesn't feel like it's the other, it feels like it's both. And I thought you guys walked that fine line perfectly from beginning to end.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is our 5th record, so it's like it took a long time of trying concepts out and executing them. And then even when you have the same concept, sometimes just the experience you have, you know, helps, or maybe gets in the way of being able to execute the ideas you have in your head or whatever. And maybe like the last album, you know, for me, I wanted more air and space to be in the last album. And some people would feel that maybe that's unbalanced with, you know, that's what we wanted. But I think doing an album like that, and then also having done albums like Dreamless and Flesh Prevails, you kind of get a vibe for, you know, what works really well for the band live, what works really well coming out of the speakers, what the audience wants to hear. It's just like all these elements. On certain albums, I would ignore certain aspects. I'd be like, well, fuck what happens live, you know, let's make this as crazy as possible. Or, you know, who cares what the audience say? Like, this is our artistic choice, we're going to do this, or, you know, all that stuff. And I think with this record, we took this record real serious with every aspect, and balance was one of those things. Like, you know, it was something we wanted people to feel like it had the aspects of Fallujah, but they were taking on a brand new journey, you know what I mean? And yeah, I just didn't want people to feel distracted by, oh, it has too much of this or too less of this. I just wanted to just slip right into their ears and just feel real nice. And there was definitely, like I said earlier, you know, there was a lot of times where we got the chance to listen to the song and find out where the momentum slipped out, or where we kind of lost that balance. You know what I mean? Like, oh shit, we've been doing prog shit for too long here, or we've been doing death metal stuff for too here. We need to insert some atmosphere, or we need to maybe change it up here. And it took a long time.
But you guys got there, and the record is definitely proof of that. Carson, Scott, I want to thank you very much for taking the time today, man. I honestly really enjoyed the album. I really enjoyed talking to you, and it's nice to see a Fallujah record that feels a little bit more reminiscent of the past. Not that I didn't like the previous album, I just thought it was a little bit too experimental for me. So I honestly enjoyed the path that you guys are trailblazing with this record. So congratulations on the magnificent album. Thank you for taking the time, man. It's a pleasure talking to you, and all the best.
Dude, thank you very much, man. Thanks for doing the interview. You got me stoked, man, how excited you are for the album, and your reaction is the exact kind of reaction I'm looking for. You know what I mean? Just
I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure once the album comes out and people start listening to it, everybody's going to have a very similar opinion, because the album doesn't really give itself to allow people to diverge in opinions. The album is what it's there. It doesn't hide itself.
That's awesome. That's sick. Yeah, as long as it makes people happy and inspires people, that's the main goal, I think. You know,
the next step is seeing you guys performing these songs live. So I'm
hoping
to catch you guys on the tour. Hopefully you guys come to Toronto playing the shows here. I saw you guys here before in the past, so I'm looking forward to seeing some of these new tracks live.
Well, I love Toronto. I can't wait, man. I cannot wait, dude. I'm
I'll buy
telling
you a
you.
beer or whatever it is that you drink. It's
Dude,
on me.
I'll hold you to it, dude. I'll buy you a beer.
I'll
But
see you
seriously,
at the
man,
show.
thank you.
100%. I'll see you at the show. Whatever you're drinking, it's on me.
All right, dude. I'll hold you to it. Fuck yeah,
All right.
dude.
Take care, man.
Dude,
Bye.
nice to meet you, man. Thank you.